messed up in your head, I could try to sort you out, all right? If you'd come by our table, everything's available in CD, DVD, USB, okay? And so the USBs are cheaper, they're bundled together, and you can pick those up. The profit from all of that goes to our main mission in the world, which is to take care of the poor and the afflicted. In this case, almost all of this will be going to China, to our missionaries there who take care of orphans that are mentally handicapped, all right? So here's all I'm asking you to do on your way out. Before you watch Michigan destroy Syracuse tonight, all right? Yeah, go Wolverines, go Big Blue, and whatever else y'all say up here. That'd be awesome. Come by the table. Allow me to put something in your hands that'll change the way you look at God forever. And in so doing, you put something in my hands to help me feed people that can't eat. Okay? Pretty good plan. Stop by and check that out. I do have several brand new series along with, whatever else we have. Almost anything you want's out there. So come check that out. All right, Matthew 18, verse 15. I want to talk to you tonight about what it means to establish the kingdom in your life, and one of the aspects of that, and in my opinion, one of the most important facets of being successful. And this is so important. If your brother sins, or your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. And if they listen to you, you have won them over. So already, we have a dynamic set in place that Jesus is assuming. One, he's assuming that his followers are people who will listen to someone else's feedback. That's one. And two, he's assuming his followers are people who are willing to give constructive feedback to someone else in a way that they would actually listen to it. All right? So the type of life Jesus is talking about here requires two things. One, that you're willing to listen to loving feedback. Two, that you are willing to commit to give loving feedback in a way that's delivered in a manner that is easy to listen to, okay? So that's easier said than done, and we're going to delve into this, but just right off at the surface, to be a Jesus kind of person, you have to be open to listening to correction from others, and you have to be the type of person who is willing to engage other people in a way that is compelling. All right? So we have to have those two dynamics in play all the time in our life. In your life, if you can create an environment where you wake up every morning knowing that God has something to teach you today from somebody else, your life will be better. Come on. If you also wake up every morning with the awareness that God is going to put someone in your life today that needs your input, your life will have meaning and value and will be better. Those two things need to be in place. Every single morning, I've tried to build this into my life. Every single morning I wake up and I say, Lord, put the person in my life today that is meant to teach me what you would have me know today. I want to learn something new every single day. If I go to bed at night and I haven't learned something new today, then I feel very disappointed. I feel like I must have missed God somewhere because God had somebody that was there to teach me something, and either I wasn't listening or I wasn't paying attention, because I believe with all of my heart that every day of my life, God has put somebody in it, unless I'm traveling 16 hours on one plane ride, but even then, you can learn something, okay? That God has put somebody in your life today that will teach you something. And so you have to wake up every morning with an open awareness that someone is coming into my life today that has information or feedback or something that is meant to be redemptive in my life to make me more like God wants me to be, okay? Now, so it takes two things. It takes you waking up every morning desiring to learn something new. Today, I think I've learned about 5 new things, all from your pastor, okay? That thing he said this morning about the donkey, that was really, 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 really good. And trust me, when the CD is made, it's gonna be in there, okay? And so I learned several new things today. At lunch today, I learned a couple new thoughts. And I thought, and so these are little seeds, little tidbits, things that you want to build into your life. But I'm open to that. I wake up every morning. Do you know how much of my life sounds like this? Shane, can I ask you one question? Okay? So I know that part of the reason God put me on this world is to help people grow and be successful and to give feedback and teaching and energy into their life. I know that. But part of what gives me the ability to do that is that I wake up every morning wanting to learn something new about myself and about my God. And I realize that I do not have a monopoly on truth. I need someone else's feedback. Which, let me just give you a very practical piece of advice. I'm not going to do this, so don't get scared, but if I walked up to you and without any time to think, if I said, tell me the last 3 books you've read, if you can't tell me quickly, you're not reading enough.
Come on.
Tim Sanders, who's the CEO of Yahoo, said this one time, I've never forgot it. He said, the failure to read is the failure to love. Because if you're not reading books, it describes an inner mindset that says you already know everything you need to know to give love to the other people. You already know everything you need to know in order to teach someone else what they would need to become better in God. And so he said to really love somebody requires you to be a reader, because readers will always then have information to give other people to make them better. Okay, all right. So we need to wake up every morning with an awareness that God has something to teach me today that I didn't know yet. People who lose in life tend to start with the mindset that says, if I don't know it, it can't be true. That is a very, very closed way to live. And believe me, especially when it comes to religion, that's oftentimes what you get, okay? But pioneers, people who are pushing forward, they're always willing to learn new things, all right? And it also requires you to be willing to teach others. 2 things, right? So if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the 2 of you. And if they listen, you've won them over. But if they won't listen, take 1 or 2 others along so that every matter can be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. I love Jesus' wisdom here. If someone sins against you, go and tell them by yourself. If they don't listen, go get 1 or 2 other people. In other words, it's always wisdom to grab someone who's not emotionally involved to actually see if something's going wrong here. All right? A lot of times, you think there's something wrong, but in fact, when you bring somebody else's perspective in, they can actually see it a little bit better. Jesus is like, let's do it that way. Then he keeps going. And if they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church, which, by the way, the church in those days was not this. The church was small groups, about 12 to 20 people at the most. That's the way the church met. Now, that I like the fact that the church has evolved to a situation where we can be like this because we can accomplish much, 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 much more. But when Jesus said if someone's sinning and they don't listen to 2 or 3 people, then tell it to the church, he was not talking about dragging poor people up on stages and saying, let me tell you about their sin. That is completely inappropriate. When he said tell it to the church would have been your small group who you have a relationship with. All correction has to come from people you have a relationship with. You are not a watchman. You are not someone who is God's guardian of all truth. If you can't tell me their children's names, you have no right to speak into their life.
Come on.
All right. Now that we're on the same page. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen to the church, in other words, if you go 1-on-1 and then 2-on-1, and then the entire small group that does life with you, they're pleading with these people to listen. If they won't do that, then treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Which, let me make a point here. How did Jesus treat pagans and tax collectors? He loved them. He was called a friend of pagans and tax collectors. So Jesus says, if someone sins, go to them 1-on-1. If they don't listen, go to them 2-on-1. If they don't listen, take it to your small group of people who are doing life together. If they don't listen to that, love them to pieces. Just love them. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, I tell you that if you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I'm with them. Now, to understand this, I want to delve through this and really try to give you something that's going to help your life, okay? To understand this passage, we have to understand 2 basic things. 1, echad, E-C-H-A-D, echad. Echad is a very important Hebrew principle that's essentially unity in diversity. It's not one. It's not like one thing, it's a lot of things acting as one, okay? So like the Detroit Lions played together as one. That's echad, okay? That's a lot of people coming together as one. It's more like what we would think of as, echad is more like fusion. Fusion is this, the merging of diverse elements into a unified whole for the purpose of power. That's the definition of fusion. The merging of diverse elements into a unified whole for the purpose of power. That is echad. Everything in God is echad because God is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Echad. God is echad. Everything in God is echad, and everything out of God is echad. God made creation. Creation is echad. What would happen to our weather if the ocean temperatures heated up 9 degrees? What would happen? It would be a disaster. You guys have all heard of the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect was founded by an MIT meteorologist back in the 70s. And what he discovered by accident is that even if the puff of air generated by a butterfly's wing was left uncorrected for too long, it would cause a meteorological disaster 100 miles away. So that essentially the whole world has to work together. If any part of creation steps out of unison with the rest of creation, it creates havoc. It creates a disaster. Your body is the same way. Your body is made up of many parts, but those parts create one person. And if one part quits cooperating, then it creates havoc for your entire life. How important, how big is an artery? Not very big. But what happens if the artery closest to your heart gets clogged up? It creates havoc for your whole body. Matter of fact, it can actually kill you, right? And so something very small can create havoc for your entire body. What about a kidney? How big is that? It's about as big as your fist. Have you ever had a kidney stone? Yeah. Did you go to work that day? No. What's wrong with you little pansy? You wimp? What's wrong with you? Come on. You got to man up. It's only this little bitty part of your body, and it just shuts everything down. See, that's ehad. Ehad is when one little part gets out of rhythm with the rest of it, it creates havoc. It creates havoc, all right? We're going to talk about that in a second, all right? 2, understanding light and dark. The words light and dark in the ancient Hebrew literature are euphemisms for anything that brings your life to disrepair. That's darkness. Light is anything that brings your life to wholeness. So these 3 words are used in unison. Light, life, increase. Death, darkness, decrease. These 3 things are used in unison. Light, life, increase is anything that leads your life to wholeness. I put before you today blessings and curses, life and death. Choose life that you might live. Darkness, anything that brings you away from wholeness and towards disrepair. One of the things I find helpful is instead of thinking in terms of right and wrong, if you think in terms of right and wrong, you can always rationalize anything. The right and wrong thinkers, they can rationalize anything. If you define things as, is it right or is it wrong? Well, almost always the answer is it depends. And you can rationalize anything. I'm a pastor and a counselor. I can't tell you the number of extramarital affairs that I've seen be rationalized because of right and wrong thinking, right? The issue isn't right and wrong. The issue is light and dark. Is this action leading you away from wholeness or towards wholeness? If we define things as light and dark instead of right and wrong, far less things are rationalizable. Far less things. Is this leading you towards wholeness or away from wholeness? Eating that extra donut, is that leading your body towards wholeness or towards disrepair? Spending that extra $500 at the mall, is that leading your financial life towards wholeness or towards disrepair? Is it right or wrong to buy that shirt? Well, if you think in terms of right and wrong, you can rationalize anything. It's not about right and wrong. It's about, is this leading your life towards wholeness or towards disrepair? Buying that new car, is it right or wrong? Not the question. The question is this: is it leading your financial life to wholeness or to disrepair? Is investing $40,000 in something that's going to be worth $20,000 in 3 years while paying 8% interest to a bank in the meantime, is that more whole or is it more disrepair? Come on. All right? So light and dark versus right and wrong and ehad. We have to understand these things. Now, listen to this from John 17. My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be ehad. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, let them be in us, so that the world might believe that you've sent me. That Jesus' evangelism strategy was that his community of followers, the kingdom of God, would be people walking together in unison. Now, this has huge implications for your sin life. If your response to someone lovingly saying, I'm seeing you make a decision that could destroy your life, if your response is, that is between me and God and no one else, leave me alone, it is none of your business, then you do not understand Ehad, the kingdom, or anything. If your sin is just between you and God, do whatever you want to do. God can handle it. But the problem with sin is that it's almost never just between you and God. It's almost always between you and God and everyone that it's affecting. That you don't live on an island by yourself. If you live on an island by yourself, do whatever you want to do. But when you live in a house with a wife and 3 kids and live in a community of people and you go to a job with 100 other people, everything you're doing is affecting everybody else around you. Now, Jesus is assuming a community of people who understand that, who don't take the stance that I can live however I want and it doesn't matter because it's not affecting anybody else. Jesus assumes that you understand that how you're living actually affects me, and how I'm living actually affects you, and how Pastor Richard and I present Christianity in public actually affects all Christians everywhere because we're giving out an image of God that might not be appropriate. And so it's not just you. You are an Ehad creature living in an Ehad world with other Ehad people, and it's important that we live together in that way, understanding that because the world's faith is at stake. Come on. All right? Now, So Jesus is assuming these things. Now, let me walk you through this. I'm going to say this a ton of different ways. I actually only have a 1-point sermon, but I'm going to say it 40 different ways, all right? All right, so the life Jesus speaks of assumes these things. 1, that people are willing to engage the darknesses of others without judgment or perpetuity. That people are willing to engage. Jesus assumes that people who follow him will engage darkness in other people with no powering up, no judgment, and with no intent to perpetrate the news. In other words, Jesus assumes that when you engage in the darkness of other people, it will not end up on Facebook. That they won't hear it back from somebody else. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever heard a secret you told someone from someone else? I did. I told a pastor once about a massive personal problem I was having. And then 3 months later, I was asked about that same personal problem by another pastor who I hadn't talked to. And I didn't, and the truth is the pastor that asked me, I would have told him. But the fact that I heard it from him before I told it, I knew the only place it could have come from was the other person. And it so damaged our relationship, not because of anything that was wrong, it was just dark. I shared something that was leading my life to disrepair, and he told somebody. Jesus is assuming the safety in a community that we can engage each other's darkness without any judgment or any perpetuity. That if I see you destroying your life and I address that with you, it's not for the purpose of powering up or acting like I'm better. It's for the purpose of engaging darkness by spreading light into it. It's an assumption that maybe I'm the person that God put in your life to teach you something today. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't see it. I know the times in my life where I've almost destroyed my life. I didn't see it. It took someone else going, listen, let me show you where this path ends up. Some people are just born with good financial sense. Other people are born financial idiots. And I am telling you, I think it's a gene. I honestly, the people I know with money today, they had money when they were 12. If you are a parent and your 12-year-old has a jar with money in his top drawer and he could tell you at any moment exactly how much money's in there, when he's 35, he's going to have money. He's going to have money. People, if you can handle money on $7 an hour, you can handle money on $70 an hour. But if you're broke on $7 an hour, you're going to be broke on $70 an hour, okay? And so some people just can't see it. They need financial input. And so Jesus is assuming that I can look at the darkness of someone else and engage that without thinking I'm better, but for the sheer purpose of bringing light to the situation, bringing wholeness, doing something along those lines without judgment or perpetuity. Let's say it another way. That people are willing to flood light into darkness for the purpose of restoration with no other purpose. So Jesus is assuming the type of community Jesus is trying to build is a community where you, sir, could address this guy's darkness. And so you could say, listen, I just see you, and no one else knows. They have no idea you've had the conversation. They assume that you could do that and that he would respond by checking his own heart and allowing light to be flooded, but that also you, sir, in your moment of darkness would be open to him talking to you. Jesus is assuming this kind of life. Let's say it another way. Let me read the scripture to you. Proverbs 25, verse 2. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. If you just can't help yourself but to spread all the news, it's bringing dishonor to God. Because the glory of God is when you conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings. So let's say it this way. Jesus assumes that we investigate the matter. Go back in your Bible, if you type that takes notes of your Bible, and circle the word if 100 times. If they sin. If they sin. Jesus assumes that you're going to investigate what actually happened. You're not going to go on rumors or someone else's version of the story or on your version of truth. And a lot of times people confuse their own emotions with the voice of God. Yeah. That you're actually going to investigate the matter. Jesus assumes that people are willing to listen, that they crave engaging suffering and darkness in order to make it right, that followers of Jesus actually learn to crave feedback. Yeah. They learn to crave, hey, tell me how I can get better. Tell me what you see on my life. I can't see everything. Listen, it's called blind spots, and everybody has them. Everybody has them. The golf swing is a great example of this, okay? When people swing a golf club, every person, go out to the driving range tomorrow. It's too cold here, but when it gets warm, go out to the driving range and watch people hit golf balls. Every person hitting golf balls in their mind thinks they're swinging like Tiger. And you're looking at them going, that ain't looking like Tiger. And you could tell from the ball flight, it ain't Tiger. You could tell from how the ball's behaving. That's how millions of dollars of golf clubs, new golf clubs, are sold every year because they convince people it was the club, it's not your swing. I've been guilty of this. I had a set of pings, and I started hitting the ball poorly. And I told myself, it couldn't possibly be my swing. It has to be the clubs. So I went and bought a set of new Callaways. And I hit them worse because Callaways are less forgiving than pings. It was like I left a nice woman for a crazy one that was a little prettier. And so I thought to myself, so then what do? If you leave your woman for a crazy woman who's a little prettier, once you work out that she's crazy, what do? You call the other one back. You're like, please take me back. So I went to my garage and I picked up my pings and I said, I'm so sorry. Please, would you have me back? And the ping said, no, you left me for the Callaways. And I said, please, I'll make it right. I'll clean you every day. I'll do whatever it takes. And finally, the pings took me back. Now, why? Because what I did is I went to a PGA pro, and he put my swing on a video camera, and he put it on a big screen, and he took Ernie Els' swing, and he superimposed Ernie Els' swing over mine, and then he brought it back frame by frame, and he showed me where my golf club was compared to where Ernie's golf club is, and trust me, I needed help. There are times in your life where your life is going into disrepair and you truly can't see why, but somebody else can. Right. And the saddest thing imaginable is that the people who see it aren't willing to engage it with you. Or that if they engage it with you, you will not listen. It takes both. In order to win at life, you have to be open to someone else's feedback and to be willing to listen, and you have to have people willing to engage in the process of helping you make it right. Both those things have to be going on at the exact same time. That's good. Jesus assumes this. Let me say it this way. Have you ever made poor assumptions about someone? Has your judgment ever changed when you got more information? Yeah. Have you ever... Has anybody in here, has your imagination ever ran wild? They haven't returned my call. This really happens when you're in love. When you first get in love, and they haven't returned my call. It's been 8 minutes. When you're married for 25 years, they could not return your call for 2 days. And you're like, did I call? I don't remember. They haven't returned my email. Maybe they don't like me. Or maybe they didn't get it. Or it got put in junk. Or maybe they're busy. And it got overlooked because 70 came up. Maybe that. They're late. If you're a parent of a teenager and their curfew is midnight, and it's 1:30, and you haven't heard from them, where does your imagination go? Best case, worst case. They said something mean. It has to be about me. It can't possibly be from the stress from the medical test that their daughter is waiting on the results for. It has to be about me. Emerson Eggerichs tells this incredible story that illustrates how our judgment changes with information. And this is why Jesus is compelling us to be brave enough to take the time to search out the matter. He talks about a bus trip he had to take, and traveling by bus is just terrible anyway. And so it was full, and he said this guy got on with 3 children. And so this one man with 3 children got on, and the man just sat there, and these children were the spawn of Beelzebub. And they're running up and down, and they're throwing food, and they're yelling and screaming and hollering, and everybody's looking at the dad, and the dad's just sort of staring off into space, and they're yelling, and everybody's looking at the dad, and now what assumption is everybody making? That this guy's a bad dad who doesn't have control of his children and doesn't care. So everybody's making that judgment, okay? Now let me be honest, okay? To be fair to everybody making that judgment, nobody thinks your children are as cute as you. Can I get an amen on that? All right? All right? People, when you're not noticing their noise, people are. All right? So these kids, so finally somebody said, "Sir, excuse me, could you get your kids under control? For goodness sake, it's 2 a.m. Right? The guy snapped out of it, and he said, "Oh, listen, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. I'll handle this. We just came from their mother's funeral, and I'm sort of in bad headspace. I've lost my wife. They've lost their mom. Please forgive me. I'll sort it out." Now, how many of you, as soon as the information changed, your judgment changed? Yeah. See? So Jesus says, if you're having a judgment problem, one of the cures for that is to actually take the time to search out the matter, to actually get all the information. Jesus says, essentially, don't let assumptions and fragments of information sit. They often become something that's not even close to the truth. Let's say it this way. There's a big difference between, next slide, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? And what were they thinking? Right. There's a big difference between those two statements. One is assuming the worst, and one is actually seeking out. The key in Matthew 18 is if they listen. Jesus is saying this, that the best possibility of them hearing you is that you're talking to them and not to somebody else. Jesus is assuming that as people who are walking, now remember, this is out of relationship. You are not the watchman of truth, okay? This is out of relationship. You have to have a relationship for this to work. That within the group of people that you know, let me say it this way. It is foolish to put your stuff on Facebook, okay? To put your darkness on Facebook is foolish. You ought to be choosy with who knows your darkness, all right? I will say that. However, if there's not 3 people in your life that know all of your darkness, then darkness is overtaking you. Okay? It is foolish to tell everybody your darkness. Let me be honest. I have some darkness. Let me be furtherly honest. I'm not going to tell you about it because it's none of your business. However, I have 5 guys, all old enough to be my dad, that know all of my darkness and all of the things in my life that could lead me to disrepair, and I am deathly open and honest with them, and they still like me, by the way. Right. But I have 5 guys in my life that are all old enough to be my dad that I am open enough to feedback from them at any level, and they know everything. Okay? If you don't have at least 3 people in your life that know everything about you and is walking you through it, then darkness has overtaken you because it is impossible for you to live life without blind spots. The greatest golfer in the world has a coach. The greatest golfer in the world, the greatest business people in the world have business coaches. Why? Because there's always something you can't see. Always something you can't see. Let me look at it from the other side, okay? Here's Proverbs 12:1. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid. It's pretty clear. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. There's two sentences there. The way of fools seems right to them. Everything you're engaging in, you think it's right. Just because you think it's right doesn't mean it's right. It just means you think it's right. And everybody engages in things they think are right. The guy out at the driving range creating divots that deep and facing to the left, he thinks he looks like Tiger Woods, but he doesn't. It seems right to him, and he can't work out why the ball's not going anywhere, and he's looking at the club going, stupid club. No, stupid swing. Stupid guy. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Listen to this one. Where there is strife, there's pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. One of the things I've been working through lately is how to develop wisdom in my life. And I looked at this, and I thought, well, part of wisdom is developed in having a core group of people that you listen to. Let's say it this way. Stern discipline awaits anyone who leaves the path. The one who hates correction will die. Okay? Obviously a euphemism, not physical death. Okay? I hate correction. No. The one who hates correction ends up ruining their life. They go into death, darkness, decrease. Right, how about this one? Those who disregard discipline despise themselves, but the one who heeds correction gains understanding. And it's interesting, that word despise there is the root word to profane. To profane is anytime you treat something as sacred as if it's common. In other words, if you hate correction, then you are treating the sacred part of you as if it's just something common. In other words, to develop your calling in life requires a love for correction. Come on. Otherwise, you're treating it as common because it'll never come to pass. It'll never come to pass. Essentially, what he's saying is this, is that if someone brings correction to you and you hate it, you think you hate them, but you actually hate yourself. You actually hate yourself. And let me make another side note to this. It has to be out of relationship. You have no right to bring correction into someone's life if you can't tell me their children's names. You have no right to do that, all right? Let's say it this way. The person walking in God's light and love can take correction and actually learns to love it. This way is difficult and why few find it. This is a narrow road thing. Most people will live their entire life in self-preservation mode to the point where they don't open up. And you know what? You shouldn't open up to most people. But if you don't have 3 or 4 that know everything about you and are giving you constant feedback into your life, then darkness is overtaking you. In my life, I have a business mentor, I have a Bible mentor, I have a walking in the Spirit mentor, and I have a group of 5 pastors, all old enough to be my dad, that are just simply my life mentors. And I can tell you that it took some work, but getting to the point where I actually love it when they give me feedback. I actually crave it, and that has brought nothing but light to my life. Now, listen to this scripture from Romans 1. This is the other side. It says, they have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decrees that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do the very things, but also approve of those who practice them. Now I want you to notice something. Notice that gossip and slander is in the same list of some really bad things like hating God. I read all of that to make a point. Gossip and slander is in the same list as hating God. Why? Because gossip and slander destroy the necessary environment of openness and honesty for people to become what God designed. Once an environment becomes not safe and people have to worry about their stuff getting spread everywhere, everybody goes into self-preservation mode. And once everybody's in self-preservation mode, then sin is empowered, because the one thing that empowers sin the most is secrets. is keeping it in. The thing that disempowers sin the best is grace and light. Bring it into the open, and we're going to give you grace with it. That disempowers sin. Let me ask it this way. What would happen if we created an environment where we confessed the sins we wanted to commit before we actually did them? What would happen if in your small group there was an environment created where you confessed the sins you wanted to commit before you actually did it? What would happen is that desire to do that would actually lose its power because it's out in the open and everybody can deal with it. What would happen if we did that? You know who's great at this is AA. Yeah. You go to an AA meeting and it is a bull crap free zone. Right. Nobody is allowed to just be hiding stuff. I love it. I love it. I didn't really understand AA. I thought AA, I just didn't really get it until I started reading a lot of Richard Rohr. And Richard Rohr is big on AA. So I actually went to a meeting and I saw the dynamic of what was going on. And I thought, this is the most empowering, amazing thing for someone who has a life-controlling issue. This disempowers things because everything comes into the light. Everything comes into the light. It is so freeing to... Hi, I'm Shane, and I am an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Shane, and I have a lust problem. Hi, I'm Shane, and I can't control my anger. Hi, I'm Shane, and I have this issue. Hi, I'm Shane, and I have that issue. Hi, I'm Shane, and I have this issue. And what happens in AA that should be happening in the church is in their small group of people, you get empowered because you realize you're not the only one with life-controlling darknesses. So you don't have to preserve yourself because you're not the only one there. Did I tell you guys about going to Catholic confession? I did this, okay? I was in Munich, and my plane got canceled, so I had 15 hours. And I didn't want to sit in the airport for 15 hours, so I took a train into the city. And do you know what's in Munich? Pope Benedict's church. All right, so Pope Benedict's church is there. And yes, it did, 15 hours. I hadn't went to confession since I was born. It's been 32 years. So I go in there and I'm looking around, and to be fair, some of it's a little creepy. Do you know they have like dead people in the building? Like, wouldn't you be worried that, hi there, So I'm walking around looking at stuff, and there was confession going on. And I thought, I want to do this. And I don't know why, but growing up as a Southern Pentecostal, I felt naughty. Like, I felt like I was sinning. Like the feeling inside was I may as well have been standing outside of a brothel or something. It was a weird feeling. But I thought I was doing something bad, but in actuality, it was really good. And so I realized when I was next that the priest was going to know I was a fraud because I didn't know what to say. So all I could do is think, well, what have I seen on TV? So I thought, okay. So I went in there and sat down, and I said, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 34 years since my last confession. Yep. Yes. And I can't remember what he said. He said, "Oh, bless you, my child," whatever. And then I started telling a guy in another country who by law can't repeat it. I started being honest, and the more I did it, the more honest I got. Yes. And by the end of it, I had told that guy every darkness in my life that I could think of. And he didn't give me any life advice. He just, did his thing. But there was something in the act of getting it out that when I walked out, I will say this, I felt better. I felt a lot better. And I thought to myself, what if we created an environment in our churches within safe small groups where people could be that open and that honest with no fear that their news here would end up there? What would happen? Gossip and slander destroy what I'm talking about. And it's in the same list as God-hating. As soon as people don't feel safe, they have to self-preserve. And in the act of Jesus said it this way, if you desire to save your own life, you'll actually, self-preservation will kill you. Yes. That actually the best life is found in losing your life. In other words, let me just put it all out there. Right. Let me put it out there. Let's say it this way. When we are consumed with self-preservation, that we can't own and get help with our own faults. We can't become the people who establish the kingdom. Let me say it this way. Gossip is verbal pornography. It gives you a quick, easy hit with no commitment to engage in the suffering and darkness in order to bring light. If I see you ruining your life, my response should be, sir, I'm going to engage that with you with no judgment, no perpetuity, with a commitment to help you get this thing right. The other option is to go tell her about it. And if I go tell her about darkness I see in you, that is verbal pornography. It gives me the quick, easy hit of engaging in suffering with no commitment to actually fix it. Gossip is the opposite of what Jesus is talking about here. Jesus is talking about a group of people who love each other enough that they will purposely engage in each other's suffering with a commitment, not a judgment or perpetuity, but a commitment to bring light to the situation. What would happen if we did that?
Come on.
If we did that. Let's say it this way. When we neglect correction, we're on a slippery slope to destruction. You don't have to try to fail. You don't have to try to fail. You can just live a life where no one's correcting you and you will fail. Yes. Destruction is just a normal part of what you will be. That is it. Now, I created this manifesto of a kingdom person, and I want to run it by you. And I want to challenge the ethos of this church. I want to bring correction. Not because I see a problem. I'm not here enough to see a problem. But I'm not an idiot. And here's what I know. If there's anything in our small groups or in our church that isn't open to two things, one, being taught every day from someone else, and you teaching someone else every day. If there isn't that, then this church is not becoming everything it can be. There's something better, all right? So I want to read this manifesto to you, and I want to challenge you to implement and apply every part of it, all right? 1, I will talk things out openly and honestly with observations and not judgments. I will talk things out openly and honestly with observations and not judgments. 2, I will be brave enough to talk it through with the person involved. I will be brave enough to talk it through with the person involved. 3, I will be open to correction myself. I'll even say another way. I will actually learn to love being corrected. That's hard. I will learn to love it. 4, I will operate in the disposition of Messiah. If you don't know what that is, it's from Exodus 34. It is compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and forgiveness. Remember, Jesus says to address someone else's darkness in a way where they'll hear you. Trust me, to see someone ruining their life and addressing it this way, you idiot!
Really?
Normally is not going to get you the results you want.
Right.
But to come compassionately saying, look, I'm making an observation here. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I just want to help. And in talking to this, I want you to know that this conversation constitutes as a commitment from me that if you want help, I will see this thing through with you.
Wow.
So people will listen.
Yeah.
Next slide. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. This happened to me. This was a few years ago. I flew to another country. The flight itself was like $2,100. I did 14 sessions at a gigantic church. And at the end of the 14 sessions, the pastor gave me a $200 blessing. Well, all of a sudden I was making assumptions like, you tightwad, you took advantage of me, like this and that and the other. But as a traveling guy, you can't do that. You have to actually either talk it through or just let it go. And the guy actually asked me when he was taking me back to the airport, he said, was that gift enough? And I said, honestly? He said, yeah. I said, that doesn't even cover 1/10 of my plane ticket. And he said, what? He said, Shane, someone told me that a rich businessman sponsored you here and paid your plane ticket plus a $5,000 weekend honorarium. I thought it was all a blessing. So the guy wasn't a tightwad, he was misunderstood, see? So you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Search it out. It is to the glory of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of kings to search things out. 6, I will keep it between me and them without triangulation. I don't involve people that don't need to be involved. Let's say it this way. I will have one conversation instead of 5. I will have one conversation instead of 5. Now, let me ask it in the form of questions, okay? Because I actually find questions better. Here's some questions. What is your initial response to correction? Is it defensiveness or openness? And only you know the answer to that, and probably all of us have been both. And likely part of your answer is it depends on who's bringing it. Don't take financial advice from a broke person. Actually be defensive. Like, that's wisdom. That's wisdom. You don't take financial advice from broke people. And all of us would be defensive if someone with no relationship was trying to tell us how to live. You hate it when people do that to you. How do you like it when 2 people in a uniform shows up at your house at 9 a.m. and interrupts your only day to sleep in to try to get you to switch religions because they have a new book written by Jesus? They don't even know you. It's like, hello? What? What are you doing? 2 by 2, we're going door to door. Because God loves Mormons and he wants some more. All right. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it when someone tries to change their life and they have no relationship with them. So to be fair, there are times when you should be defensive. If someone doesn't know you, you actually should be defensive. But when someone who is your brother or sister who is doing life with you on a week in and week out basis, if they're bringing correction to you, you should be open to it. And we have to develop that. We have to develop that. 2, how open are you to the strength of feedback? 3, how many marriages in this room could benefit from a third party? From someone else's input? 4, have you considered bringing in another person's perspective to your business? Why not?
Right.
Why not? Correction and feedback is such an important part of what Jesus is talking about. I'll just ask this way. It's not on the board. I'll ask it this way. If you believe that it's important, say amen. That was pretty weak. Say amen. Then, in the last 30 days, who have you been open to getting feedback from? Is it a part of your life? You got to seek it out. 5, do you have a gossip problem? Let's say it this way. When is the last time you said something about someone else without talking to them? Do you have a gossip problem? Let's say it this way. How did it work out? I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Next slide. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. What were you trying to accomplish? You're talking bad about someone else behind their back. I'm sure you had a good motive to do that. What were you trying to accomplish? Tell me. Tell me. 8, can you ask God for the guts to talk to them? To speak the truth to the only person who can fix it?
Wow.
Can you give them the benefit of the doubt? Maybe you don't understand. I remember one time someone very close to me got very cold with me. And it was someone that mattered a lot. And it hurt me, and I thought, I don't know what's going on. But I know this person well enough to ask. And I was very hurt by how cold they were being. And so I went to this person, and I said, listen, I just feel like there's distance between us, and I don't understand it. Can you help me understand it? And they said, oh, Shane, oh, look, I'm really sorry. I know I treated you that way the other day, but I'm actually waiting on the results of a biopsy. And so my head was somewhere else. And so if you could actually, can we pray together that this cancer scare will be nothing? And it actually made our relationship better versus me just, blowing up or whatever. Can you give them the benefit of the doubt? 10, are you willing to be brave enough to become this kind of person? Let me be open with you. I'm sure there's been many times in my life where I've despised correction. But if you ask me, Shane, has there ever been a time in your life where you've despised correction? Immediately, 3 different instances come to my mind. There have been 3 very big times in my life where my spiritual fathers were encouraging me to go a different direction, and I shunned their advice. And the reason I did was because I asked them to explain. I said, tell me why. Why do you feel that way? I don't know. There's something not right. We just feel, there's this thing. I'm telling you, Shane, this is going to hurt you. Well, if you can't tell me, forget that. Hello? You got to have something better than that. And all 3 times, all 3 for 3, it almost destroyed me. So now I've just made a commitment to them because they never abused their power. Whatever you tell me to do, even if I don't understand it, I will blindly obey you. Because 3 strikes, you're out. 3 for 3, it almost destroyed me. Look at my head. I am 37. A year ago, I was asked out by a 58-year-old woman. And to be fair, this was an attractive, smart, not weird 58-year-old woman, which in a way made it worse because what that meant was she actually thought I was in her age bracket. My mom is 59. Which led me to all kinds of questions like, how old do I look? What happened in my life where a 58-year-old thought I was in her league? Which, by the way, nothing wrong with being 58. And this woman was an attractive 58-year-old. But when your mom's 59, it's very difficult to go out on a date with a 58-year-old. Unless they include a copy of their bank statement and has like 25 million in it, right? And then you can overcome all kinds of old, right? Look, if you're here and you're 58 and you're interested and there's like 30 million in the bank, here comes, yeah, okay, now listen. What happened in my life where a woman thought I was in my early 50s? And at the time, I was 36. What happened? I hated correction. When you hate correction, you go prematurely gray. Now, that sounds funny, and it is a little bit. And you got to laugh at yourself. But I'm being open and honest in front of you that the times in my life where I hated correction almost destroyed me. I am urging you to not have to halfway destroy your life in order to learn the value of correction and being teachable. I urge you to be people who wake up every day knowing that God has something to teach you from somebody else and that God has put you in someone else's life to teach them something. And together we can grow in unity. Amen. And avoid this. I urge you to be people who age well. By loving correction. I urge you to seek out a group of 3 or 4 people who you can be totally open and honest with, and I promise you sin will lose its power in your life. It will. Once it's out in the open, it doesn't matter. But you have to create an environment where no one's going to get fired when they're honest, and no one's going to be sacked from their position, and no one's going to be hurt, and nothing's going to be announced from a stage. Right. If we create that kind of community, we can take one giant leap toward establishing the kingdom right here in Rochester. May we be those people. Amen. Let's pray together. Lord, you're wonderful, and we love you, and we honor you. We proclaim you're king, and there's none like you. Lord, would you give us the courage to see things differently and the irresistible urge to respond to what we see? Right now, just right there under your breath. I know this seems a little bit weird or stupid, but it's not. Just right there under your breath. Why don't you ask the Lord, Lord, would you give me 4 people that I can be like this with? Lord, forgive me for hating correction. There's darkness in my heart and you've put other people in my life to deal with that. May I embrace it. Give me the courage to see things differently and the irresistible urge to respond to what I see. I want to be a kingdom person. Amen. Amen. Would you look this way? Thanks so much for being with us this weekend. Thanks so much for letting me be your guest. I hope that was a real blessing to you. I bless you today to know that you serve a God who believes in you more than you believe in him. I bless you today to know that he's entrusted you to spread the kingdom in this area. I bless you today to be people who are open and honest. I bless you to be people who love correction. I bless you to be people who choose the way of the donkey without being a jackass. Grace and peace. God bless.